to another edition of the Walpole Business Spotlight Show, brought to you through the efforts of the Walpole Chamber of Commerce and Walpole Media Television. My name's Harry Brusades. I'm your host, and I'm also the president of the Walpole Chamber of Commerce. The mission of the show is to bring information to the general public regarding local business owners, sales professionals, and the information about their business or products so our general public can make great buying decisions. My guest today is Jeffrey Lydon from Lydon & Murphy Home Insurance or Insurance in Norwood, Mass.
Nice
Jeff,
to see you, Charlie.
Thanks for coming on today. So, first off, let's talk about Lydon & Murphy Insurance. Okay. Where are they located exactly?
Right on Route 1 in Norwood on 520 Providence Highway.
Okay. And that, I believe, is right next to the dollar store?
Yes, right beside it. And the
H&R Block is on the bottom?
Exactly. And Launch, the new trampoline park that's been there for a couple of years.
Oh, okay. Ty Law's place?
Yes, exactly.
All right. And how long has Lydon & Murphy been in business?
Wow, we're coming up on almost 40 years next year. Yeah.
Wow.
And we've been in that location since October of '93.
So you've been doing insurance for 40 years?
Well, I personally know. I've been in
okay.
it since '92. It was my father's agency and his partner's agency.
Okay. And your partner is?
Steve Murphy,
Steve Murphy.
who is the son of my dad's former partner.
Yeah, it's a great story. You got Lydon and Murphy, and then both sons ended up taking over in 1990?
I came on board in '92. Steve
Oh.
came on board in '95, and then we purchased the agency from our fathers in 2010.
Okay. So when we say Lydon & Murphy Insurance, what type of insurance does that encompass?
We're mostly a property and casualty agency. We mostly personal lines, home, auto, umbrella, motorcycles, boats, all those type of toys that people have also. We also write a fair amount of commercial insurance, mostly small businesses. But yeah, that's the bread and butter of our book of business.
And for small business owners as well, I think I remember here you said something about workman's comp as part of that too?
Yes, we do. We write all lines of commercial insurance,
Okay.
from the liability to the commercial auto to the workman's comp, and anything that a small business owner would need.
And how many people do you have in your support staff?
We have 3 full-time, 1 part-time, and myself and my partner.
Very good. And when we had talked in the past, I guess being up on Route 1, a big staple of your business was the auto insurance business, being on the auto mile.
Sure.
Is that where both of your fathers kind of made their bones?
They did. I mean, Massachusetts auto insurance used to be a fixed and established rate system by the state of Massachusetts. So basically up until 2008, the insurance you were buying from any agent or any carrier was basically the same thing. So we for a long time built our book of business on auto insurance, but then in 2008 the state deregulated. Now we have a very competitive and larger marketplace for auto insurance in Massachusetts.
And how have you found the competition environment has changed? Now all we see on TV now is Geico and what's the other one with the girl there?
Progressive. Flow.
Yeah,
Sure.
Flow. So, I mean, the General, that's
Yes,
the other one.
Yes, that's a new one. I'm coming to hear more about that one.
So it's, tell me how that has changed as far as your business model, and what does that really meant for the consumer?
I think it's great. I mean, there's more markets, which is always a great thing, which if consumers are going to take the time and energy to look around, they can find the best price and fit for them. They have to be careful about the price because a lot of these direct writers and so forth will want to sell you what can you afford type of insurance. And so a lot of times when you read through those policies, there's a lot of items that are missing. We've become a society that I think people want to get everything done 5 minutes ago, but with a little bit of time and effort and a little bit of looking to see what best fits you, you can probably find the same pricing and coverage with a little bit more time to look at it.
And I find that same experience similar in my industry when it comes to life insurance.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are picking up the phone and calling 1-800-LIFE insurance are being asked what they want, versus having a professional or an expert sit down with them and evaluate their needs first.
Absolutely.
And then kind of give them a good education on what they really should need.
Yep.
I know there's a big difference between want versus need purchase, but when it comes to our business and protecting people, we need to make sure that their needs are fulfilled first.
Absolutely.
Price versus value, as that whole debate goes.
And I think the local aspect is important. And I'll give an example. I'm not going to say the exact. That was one of the carriers you named. One individual had called them up when their son got their permit. Well, they started charging them $75 a month to have them on the policy with their permit. Well, in some other states they do that, but we don't do that in Massachusetts. So you have to remember sometimes some of those savings can come back and catch you in a different way down the line when you're working with a company, when you talk to an individual who is in another state and has no idea sometimes in Massachusetts law because they're working with other laws in other states in so many different areas.
Sure. So Jeff, where are you originally from?
I grew up in Cohasset. I've lived in Scituate now since '95.
So you're still living
Yep.
in Scituate, and you've got 2 daughters?
I do, a 16 and a 14-year-old.
Oh, very nice. So starting to think about college soon?
Yeah, we're looking around on April vacation.
Very nice. And you went to University of Rhode Island,
Correct.
and I see you majored in insurance?
I did. I
didn't know they had that.
They do, actually. URI is one, at the time, and I feel awful saying this, I'm not sure if they still carry it, but was one of the few schools that does carry an insurance major. UMass at the time didn't offer it, so I was able to go to URI and take that major.
Very nice. And I see you also have some interests, and one of those interests are commercial and personal insurance. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then you have skiing.
I do. I ski quite a bit. Both my daughters are ski instructors at Mount Sunapee, so we get up there quite a bit.
Excellent. So your life's insurance, your interests are insurance.
Okay.
So it's very important to you.
I do. I think it's important. I think people. It's a mainstay in everybody's life.
So, you and I have had conversations regarding whether it be back to the basics or more holistic planning when it comes to protection. Mm-hmm. And I know one big thing that we've continually discussed, and we've talked about it regarding our clients, is picking an optional additional policy when it comes to coverage. Mm-hmm. And that's called umbrella insurance. Mm-hmm. So let's tell our viewing audience a little bit what umbrella insurance really is, because I don't think most of them know what that is.
Okay. So when you on your auto policy or homeowner's policy, you have basic liability limits that you will carry on your policy. So let's say in an auto situation, you were in an accident, you were to hurt somebody. Let's hope that there's no one's hurt, and if they're minor injuries. But if that individual was to be permanently harmed, or worst case scenario, to kill someone in an accident, or let's say on your homeowner's policy, let's say you had a dog and they bit someone, and you take a 5-year-old and they had a face bite. You could see your limits on either your homeowner's policy or your auto policy being maxed out fairly quickly in those circumstances. The umbrella policy then serves as a additional coverage that would kick in once those limits on those underlying policies were exhausted. So, the starting umbrella policy is $1 million umbrella. So in theory, if you had that horrible accident and the person was either severely injured or died in the accident, you would have another layer of umbrella insurance covering over those two policies.
Now, I've brought a deck page of my home and my auto policies, and I've always continued to question some of these line items. But just one is, so if I've upped my coverage to $250,000 per person and $500,000 per accident, okay, and there's 3 people in the car and they all pass away and I'm at fault, that would be it only goes $250 per person. So that would be $750, but then it says per accident, so it's capped at $500.
It is capped at $500 in that circumstance. Yes.
All right. So unless you have the additional umbrella protection, that's the extent that the claim will pay, is $500,000. And by the way, I just wanted to search back for a quick second. When we talked about going to the Generals and the Geicos of the world, the most important thing about insurance is the fact that it pays right when something hits the fan.
Sure.
And that you can get somebody on the phone to help you through it. So good luck to you when you call Nebraska at 1-800
Yes.
who knows who,
Yep.
versus driving down to your office in Norwood and talking to you in person and having you get on the phone and basically represent your client to that insurance carrier. You know, so when we talk about this umbrella insurance, we also revert back to myself on the planning side just a little bit, because when I'm sitting down with my clients, I mean, whether it be a 25-year-old or a 65-year-old, whether it be a person that's just starting out in their profession or somebody that's amassed tremendous wealth, when I bring up that question about umbrella insurance, they usually look at me like I'm speaking a different language. And I can't believe that they've gone through this long without ever hearing that, or their agent never bringing it up. And typically the reason is that most P&C agents, I believe, are really focused on price too. They want the business and they're going to give the client the best deal, end of story. And then that client walks away thinking they accomplished what they needed to. They got a great price, the guy told them what they needed, check mark, I should be all set. And then I come in and sit down with them and say, well, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, if you leave this meeting today and get in that car accident, what's gone and what is protected? Your primary residence is protected with the Homestead Act. Your assets under a 401k or retirement funds are protected by law. Everything else is up for grabs.
Sure.
So if you've got $100,000 to $200,000 sitting in a savings account, wave bye-bye.
Yep.
If you've got a property, an investment property or a place down the Cape, wave bye-bye. Plus the fact that you might have to spend hours and days in court and it might cost you $100,000 in legal fees, versus just go pick up a $1 million umbrella policy at the very least. And potentially some people have more assets, they might need more. And I know we've also noticed that premium, whether it be $300 for $1 million in coverage, doesn't just double as you go up 1, 2 to 4. It's not as bad.
No, it's not. They're fairly inexpensive policies, depending on how much of an underlying risk, meaning if there's a lot of drivers and there's, you have 4 or 5 cars. But a simple, husband and wife, home, 2 autos, they could be looking at a premium of $160 a year. That's it.
Yep.
And probably, and we like to say in the office, if there's enough questions asked on their current auto or home, there's probably an additional discount that we could give on the auto or home if we go through the whole questionnaire.
Sure.
That will cover the 160 and almost in some ways make that a free, additional policy.
Right. Or another place to go is we could look at the deductible. So that's another big wives' tale that I've always seen or heard. And I would say that 90% of the people that I do meet have a $500 deductible, because they're always just, oh my God, if I get in an accident, I have a claim,
Sure.
I only have to spend $500, and the insurance carrier covers the rest. Well, when you look at that line item, and like for me, I think I've got a $1,000 deductible, of course, but it says $223. And if it was a $500 deductible, maybe it would say $423, another $200 more to protect that $500 gap. But I tell people, just do the math.
Sure.
If you can save $200 this year and not have a claim, and $200 next year and not have a claim, you've basically already won.
Absolutely.
And you've kept the money in your pocket versus theirs, because they're never going to give it back to you. So great point on financial efficiency and or picking up the savings by moving the deductible up, and then using that savings to pick up the umbrella coverage that we spoke about.
And a lot of the carriers that we represent now are putting in an accident forgiveness endorsement on the policy. So every year, I'm sorry, not accident forgiveness, diminishing deductible. So if you don't have a claim this year, we're going to, at the bottom of your policy, you'll see a diminished deductible, but say $25, $50. So if you go claim free for 5 years, your deductible now is $250 less than what it states on the policy. So if you have a $500, it really is only a $250 now. So in theory, you could take the $1,000 deductible, really only have a $750 deductible, and pocket those savings every year on the renewal.
And do you find the $1,000 deductible on the home is pretty much the norm, and price diff doesn't really vary on that?
Yeah, 500 used to be the standard, now 1,000 is absolutely the standard, and we're seeing a trend on the carriers starting to get closer to offering a more sizable discount if you're willing to even go to a 2,500. And on a high value home, the $5,000 deductibles are becoming more commonplace.
Okay. Now, when it comes to choosing your property and casualty agent like yourself, I assume a lot of people have either got a referral from a friend of theirs, or maybe went to the same insurance carrier that their parents had at a certain time, and have just kept it for a long, long time. And if those agents are on at least a yearly or every 2 years, reviewing their policies, maybe double checking with the carrier to see if there's a better carrier or a better price out there, do these people have to wait for the renewal time period to call somebody else for a second opinion? How does that work on the timeline scale?
I think everybody should review their policy every year, and most agencies are reaching out to their customers prior to the renewal to check in with them. We do it 60 days prior to the renewal of their auto policy. That's the trigger policy with us. But back to your question, on home, you can switch your homeowner's policy at any time. There is no penalty. You can switch at any time. The only time it can get a little complicated is if you're on a mortgagee bill, but we handle that with the mortgage company at the time if you switch. On the auto policy in Massachusetts, there's a 30-day window prior to the policy expiring and 30 days after the policy expires that you can switch your insurance without any type of penalty clause. And after that 60-day window, there's a short rate cancellation fee that your carrier, if you switch from them, can charge you. It's a small amount. It can go from maybe $30 up to $100 in the middle of the policy period. So you do want to take that into consideration if you are switching specifically for price, to figure that into your equation.
Okay. And how often or how many different carriers do you guys use predominantly through your business?
Wow. On auto insurance, we represent 4 carriers right now. Home insurance, about 6 to 7. We also have other brokerage services that we use to represent if we can't find that certain fit. Okay.
And by the way, I know we had that whole flood insurance thing that came up a couple years back when they were changing the flood zones. How's that going right now?
It is very confusing. I feel bad for the consumer. I do, because it is a difficult product. It's all underwritten by the National Flood Program. You will see different companies advertising it, but it really all is underwritten. It's all the same pricing no matter who you go through. You do need an elevation certificate. You need to figure where you are on the flood zone map. It's a complicated policy. It's expensive, and you need to make that decision if it's the right fit for you if you're not in a flood zone and aren't required to have it.
Well, I mean, even if you weren't in a flood zone and they changed the maps, they're saying that you are now in a flood zone.
Okay.
And they were requiring people to get it.
They are.
Down the Cape and along the ocean, I mean, everybody knew they were on a flood zone.
Sure.
I think their rates were just getting jumped up regardless. But do you also have a carrier that is an option against the Mass State flood?
No.
You don't work with any of those?
It's not that you'll see carriers advertised out there, but they actually, you'll see the policy written with their name on it, but it's actually underwritten by the National Flood Program.
Really?
It's kind of a window dressing, really.
Okay. All right. All right, so now let's just say that one of your clients does get in an accident. Number one, who do they call first? And number two, how will that affect their premiums moving forward?
We'd like them to call us first if they can. Obviously,
Okay.
that we're not there 24/7 in the office, and our carriers all do have a 24/7 call line, which we have on our website and our phone system. We'd like them to call first us on an accident. It depends on the accident. Depending on if they're at fault, and the circumstances, they can get a surcharge for that accident. If it's weather related or if there's a circumstances that seems like it was outside their control, they can appeal that surcharge. They will get a surcharge notice in the mail, and it gives you on the back of it the right to, for a small fee, I think it's $25 now or $50 it might have gone up to, that you can appeal the surcharge, and then you'll get a date probably 6 months down the line to appear in a small kind of clerk magistrate type setting and walk through the accident, and hopefully you can win the appeal.
Will that still, regardless, affect your premium?
It does.
Okay.
If you do get a surcharge, it's going to go on your driving record, and you are going to.
Well, even if you don't get a surcharge, just say you're in an accident, you are able to appeal the surcharge.
Okay.
But will your baseline premium still go up?
No, not if you don't get a surcharge.
Oh, okay. All right. And you just hinted on something that I remember finding out at some point. If you do get in a car accident when there is a major storm, now I'm not sure if it needs to be a named storm or something, but I heard that there's an out on that. Is that what the?
Well, I don't know if a specific storm in a sense, but we do like to tell the insureds that you go before kind of, like I said, a very impromptu setting where there's a kind of a clerk magistrate there and someone from the company, and you get to tell your story. These are human beings. They understand it. If you tell them, listen, and you have enough information available to say, hey, this was a blizzard.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was going off the road. There was icy conditions.
Sure.
There's a good chance you'll win the appeal.
Okay.
They're
Like
pretty
that,
fair.
you know, that video, and I'm not sure if it's Facebook or YouTube, but there's like the first person goes sliding down and crashes, and then the second person goes down,
Yeah.
and the third, and there must be 20 of them. I mean, they just have to show that video and say, the road was unsafe. It
Yeah.
wasn't my fault, right?
Yeah, and that's what you're basically, like you're saying, it's outside their control.
What do you think has a higher surcharge, minor accident or getting a speeding ticket?
They're pretty close.
Are they?
It depends. And there's a lot of circumstances. It depends on where you live, what type of vehicle you drive, how long you've been driving. A young operator, it can vary. But accidents generally are going to cost you a little bit more than a ticket.
So trying to really get that inside information out of you. Another thing that I remember you talking about was all these new Uber drivers.
Oh.
So I mean, let's just say I want to make a couple extra bucks and I sign up for Uber and I start driving around people. I'm like, great, I'm making money. I wasn't doing anything other than hanging around. Now I can drive around and make some extra money. Life's great. But you had mentioned something that might not be too great.
Yeah. Well, Uber carries a policy. And there's different stages when you're driving for Uber or Lyft, and I know them fairly well, but not fantastically well. When you're out driving around and you don't have anybody assigned to you, technically the Massachusetts personal auto policy deemed you as now in a business pursuit. The Uber policy only kicks in once you've gotten assigned to go pick up somebody. So when you're out, waiting for someone to be assigned to you, you're still acting in a commercial taxi type setting. The Massachusetts auto policy could deny you coverage. The taxi policy, and this is part of the complaint of the taxi drivers, they pay anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 a year for a commercial cab policy,
Sure.
which would be the correct policy to cover you in that circumstances. There's a lot of pending litigation on all this that's going to happen. They'll clear this all up, but just be careful. There are a few carriers now coming out with endorsements to your personal auto policy that you can pay for to give you a little bit more coverage, but to be completely covered, the taxi policy is the right way to go.
So is there anything that we haven't really addressed that you think is super important yet at this point?
No, I think the umbrella policy is the biggest thing
Sure.
out there that you and I talked at length, again, for the price standpoint. Another thing we're seeing really popular, and I think it might be the best dollar to value policy in Massachusetts or any place, is a renter's insurance. I mean, you can get a renter's policy for about $150 a year. And not to mention, the renters might cost $150, but you might get like an $80 to $90 discount on your auto policy for just taking out the renters. So at the end of the day, what does the renters really cost you? A lot of landlords are now requiring their tenants to have the renter's policy.
Interesting.
Because basically, the renters does two things. It replaces all your items at the time of a loss. So if there was a fire, your landlord's policy is not going to cover your personal items. And not to mention, if you are involved in a litigation situation, either in the apartment or, I don't know, let's say you're at the grocery store and you drop something on somebody, you've now got that renter's policy to come back to for that liability.
And you also might want to think about your kids in college for those renters policies as well, right?
Sure, if they're renting a house or anything like that. We haven't really run into circumstances where they want them in the dorms or anything.
Right.
But if they're renting a house, it could be a scenario that you want to look into.
Okay. And so lastly, let's finish with combining all your policies.
Okay.
I think that when I run into people and we start reviewing the stuff with them, if they've got policies with different carriers, it will always be more economical to combine.
It's enormous.
Right.
I feel like every year they raise the percentage discount for combining. The carriers just want you everything under one roof.
Sure.
Not to mention, I think that serves people well in any type of, God forbid they get involved in some litigation aspect. You don't have your home and your auto and the umbrella someplace else.
Right.
It's all nice to have it all under the same company.
And then another big, I think, misnomer too is people that have been in like USAA forever because they're in the service and they believe that's the place to go because they served and USAA kind of serves the veterans. I love the thought of it, but I think when we've actually quoted some of these people, the apples to apples, it's even been better and more economical. So again,
Absolutely.
it just always makes a good thing to go out and get a second opinion.
Sure.
And what is your tagline that you like to use?
Don't just renew, review.
Just don't renew, review.
Yeah.
All right, great. So I just want to finish up with some contact information. Again, address in Norwood,
520 Providence Highway
okay? And your website address?
is www.lydonmurphy.com.
Excellent. So Jeff, I thank you very much for coming here
Yeah.
today. It was very informative. Jeff is also a member of the Chamber of Commerce and also in a business networking group here in Walpole. So his business is local. He's here to serve the public, and I hope that you've enjoyed today's show. Very important information today about protecting your assets, your home, your car, your future income. So please reach out to your local property and casualty agent and see if they can help you, or please call Lydon and Murphy for a new review. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Be well, be safe.